resistors. Burning hot subject. Well, burning hot in that, what power do they use? I've been using resistors for quite some time, put them in a circuit. They all have a power rating. These are quarter watt resistors, and I always think, well, if I've got more than one resistor, what does that do to the wattage? What does it do to its ability to dissipate the power? If I've got more than, say, 2 or 3, does it just add them all up? I've always been under the assumption that if I've got more than one, I just add the wattage rating together. So if I've got 2 quarter watts, I've now got half watt power dissipation. But is this true for parallel and series resistors? Do they just all add up, or do they just burn up? So let's have a look. Okay, so let's turn the power on, get some resistors, and see what happens. 12 volts on my power supply. I've got a little fan unit here that I've made. It's just a fan with some filter stuff in the front, and if we see the smoke rising, it's going to go through there. So let's start off with something like a single resistor. Using Ohm's law, I've got a 1k resistor, 12 volts. It's only going to give me 12 milliamps. So by rights, if you calculate that, I've got about 1/8 of a watt. It says 1.44 watt. So that should be okay. It might get a bit warm, but it shouldn't burn. We've got power in there. It's connected. It's not doing anything. Doesn't look like it's doing anything because we've got no readout, nothing to show. But what we're looking for is that it just does nothing, because it's not showing us anything actually. And you have, I don't have to touch the anywhere on here. Oh, wrong way. Minus voltage means the electrons are falling out. 12 volts, and that resistor is just fine. So what if I've got 2 resistors in parallel? So I've got a 1k there, so if I have 2 1k resistors in parallel, I'll end up with 500 ohms. 2 500 ohm, 2 1k resistors in parallel. Obviously half the resistance, 500 ohms, I'm going to have double the ampage, so 24 milliamps. I'm going to take the wattage now up to 0.288, supposedly calculated, but that's only just over a quarter of a watt. So if I'm right, and that for every time you add a resistor, whether it be in series or parallel, you just add the wattage up, I've now got half a watt. So that shouldn't be a problem. That should be just fine. Shouldn't burn, should it? Nothing's happened yet. Okay, let's put the multimeter across there to show that I have got 12 volts. There we go, 12 volts, and no smoke. I don't know if they're getting warm or not, I couldn't tell you. But, so okay, that's 2 1k resistors, 500 ohms in a parallel. So let's move on to something else. What about a lower resistance, but singularly? Like, I haven't got 500 ohms, so the next one I'll do is a 470 ohm resistor, but on its own. So this one should be around about the same as the 2 1k in parallel. I've calculated that I'm going to end up with about 0.3 of a watt, 300 milliwatts. But actually that's higher than the rating for this quarter watt resistor. So in theory it should go up in smoke, I suppose, or at least we'll see it discolour and burn out of it. So that's why I've got the fan. Turn that on. looks alright, don't seem to be doing much, so hey, perhaps this is gonna work alright. Yeah, looks alright to me. Wonder if I can get a temperature reading on that. So just going to dig out my other meter and see if I can measure the temperature on this. So back in a moment. Okay, here we go. I've got my little meter. Let's turn this back on again. Now this is just a standard multimeter that's got a temperature thing and a thermistor on the end there. So that is on, and we'll have a look to see how the temperature is rising on that. Well, actually, it's pretty darn cool. Going up very slightly. So even though this is a quarter watt resistor, to me it seems to be doing just fine with the supposed 300 milliwatts of power it's dissipating. There's not really any problem with that. I don't think there is. Okay, so let's try and I don't know. Let's try the two in parallel. Now I'm going to go with not even one. Another 455 ohms. Actually, it's 910 ohm resistors in parallel. And again, these should be perfectly fine because, as far as I'm concerned, the current should be about 26 milliamps, which is really very small and should give me just over 300 milliwatts. Now if I've got, again, two of these in parallel, because two 910 ohm resistors in parallel gives me 455 ohms. These two should, again, be perfectly fine in coping with the wattage, which is around about 300 milliwatts, just over. So again, yeah, as you can see, that it's actually quite hard to burn out resistors unless you're talking about really low value resistors. Again, let's have a quick look. We do have 12 volts there. 12 volts, 450 ohms, 55 ohms of resistance, just over 300 milliwatts of power. Not a problem. So, what shall I put in now then? Well, let's try 450 ohms, but this time, instead of having two resistors in parallel, let's do two in series. Let's do two low ones. So that's going to be 220 ohm. So if I get these to come together, I might just use this crop clips to make sure it stays together. So this time I've got 440 ohms, about 27 milliamps. Supposedly should give me, again, just over 300 milliwatts, 320 odd milliwatts or whatever it is, something similar to that. Two resistors in series, so again I'm expecting I'm going to have half a watt of power dissipation. So there you go. It's not a problem. It's not burning out. There's no flames. Just have a look at temperature on those. See, that's the current temperature in the building here. That's hardly bothering it, is it? 34, and the other resistor 34. Now you might be thinking, well, these will be dissipating a bit of heat, I suppose, but they're the ones that really have to be able to cope with it. The resistor, yeah, not a problem at all. No, I was hoping I was going to get some flames out of this, but doesn't look like it today. So let's move on to the last resistor I've got here, which is another resistor. It's about 400 ohms. It's 430. So if I think about it, I've done two 910 ohms in parallel, so that's 455 ohms in parallel. Two 220 ohm resistors in series, it's 440 ohms. Again, if I'm right in the way that my mind works, I've just added up all the wattage and ended up with half a watt of power dissipation, which is more than capable of being able to do that with the two resistors. But now I'm going to have one resistor of 430 ohms. Again, we're talking about, well, it's about 228 milliamps and about 330 milliwatts of power. Now this is a quarter watt resistor. Now I did do a single resistor before, 470 ohm. So is there going to be a difference between a 470 and a 430 ohm? Is it going to make that much difference? Because there's not much difference in resistance. Well, let's turn it on and find out. There you go. Let's have a look and see if there's any heat in this. And again, not really. It all seems to be working just fine. So how about I take this down? Well, it's getting warmer, it's nearly 50 degrees, but it's not. No, it's not. It's not worrying it, is it? I think if I left it long enough, it would heat up to a point where it might do some damage. So let's find some much lower value resistors. Let's go for something small, like a 100 ohm. Let's find out what I've got in here. Here we go. 100 ohm resistors. Now, if I just grab my calculator. Okay, so we've got 100 ohm. Let's do 100. We've got 12 volts divided by the 100 ohm. Gives me 120 milliamps. Times that by the 12 should tell me that I would need a 1¼ watt resistor. And all I've got is a ¼ watt. So if I take one of these resistors, I'm fairly confident that this thing will burn. Give it a bit of time. Is that doing anything? Well, it doesn't seem to be doing anything. It's not going a funny colour. It's not. I presume it's not getting hot. I'm beginning to think this ain't working. Okay. Oh, now that is getting hot. Look, we're at 100 degrees. That is going to burn out at some point. but I'm not sure it's going to do it just yet. Oh, it's got a bit of a funny colour. Anyway, I've got a smaller resistor than that. I have. So let's find one of these. There we go. 68 ohm resistor. Right, so 68 ohm resistor, 12 divided by 68 times by 12. Now this is telling me I would need more than a 2 watt rated resistor, and this thing is a 1/4 watt. So let's just connect that on. And this thing I would expect to burn through quite quickly. Not doing a lot, is it? Well, it's I don't know if you can see it is smoking. There is a bit of smoke coming from that. Like that, it is actually starting to burn up, because it can't handle the MAC power going through it. And I wonder if it's dead now already. Is that still... oh, it's still burning. I don't know if you can see this, but there is a little bit of whiff of smoke coming out of it. Keeps on burning. Just see if there's any voltage left across that. There is, still got 12 volts across it. This means it's still going up. Oh yeah, look at that. Definitely got destruction going on there. So let's turn it off. Now, I suppose the test is here, is that if I shove whole bunch of these that's even burnt me mat. I have to shove a bunch of these in I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I've got 9 there, so I could, I suppose, do that. But what's the thing with 9? If I've got 9, I'd have to calculate it, how much resistance I've got in total. If I just clamp all these together, and then turn it on, so effectively I've got 1/4 watt times by 9. We've got 0.25 times by 9 should give me 2.25 watts, but the resistance is a lot less, because now I've got 68 ohms divided by 9, 7.5 ohms. So 12 divided by 7.5 times by 12 means I should have a 20 watt resistance in there. So this stuff should smoke. Well, it's not doing a lot at the moment. There is smoke. Look at that. Now they're going toast. They really are toasting. Burning. So just go to show I should have about 20 watts of power dissipation for that. And I'm going to have to turn that off because the smoke is horrendous. Even this filter thing can't handle that. Ooh, that's nasty. Yeah. So there we have it. Conclusive proof. Conclusive proof of what? What have I actually just done? Well, to me, I've just proved that if I've got more than one resistor, whether it be in parallel or in series, I just add the wattage up. I just add its power rating up. So quarter watt, 2/4 watts in series, half a watt, 2/4 watts in parallel, half a watt. I suppose what I've got to be careful of is that if you have several resistors in parallel, then the overall resistance drops, and then it's going to have a lot more current going through it, so the power dissipation is increased. Now, a quarter or 3/4 watt resistors is only going to give you 3/4 of a watt, but if your overall resistance now means you're going to need to have a 1.5 watt resistor, then you're going to have to start paying attention. It's all in the maths, I suppose. It's not hard. I can't think of any reason why you'd have a large bank of resistors in parallel, except maybe something to do with current shunt or something like that, maybe. So there you go. What else can you say about it? If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. All comments are welcome. Just put them in the comments below, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.